Welcome everybody to Ally on the Fly, or A11y on the Fly. That maybe, Jeremy, we should let the people decide what we call this thing. I'm Ryan Bateman.
Hello, I'm Jeremy. I'm the developer advocate at Deque, and we're here to quiz people on the fly to see if they know common accessibility issues while they're developing.
Yeah, so we invited Harris Schneiderman to join us on this episode that you're about to watch or listen to. And we've given him virtually no information. We say, have an environment ready, be ready to test some stuff. But he's been given no advance information about what challenge we're about to present him with. And that challenge is what?
The challenge that we've picked out today is to find out if he could code an accessible button, and then what to look out and some of the nuances surrounding why buttons are different when you have a native HTML button and if you want to create a custom button.
All right. Let's get this thing on the road.
He's waiting. Let's let him in.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Can you kick us off? Let us know who you are, please.
My name is Harris Schneiderman, and I do product management at Deque, and I work on a number of tools like the Axe DevTools extension, Axe account portal, Jira integrations, and a lot of things. And I was formerly a developer here for a decade before that.
Right on. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Jeremy, what do we have in store for Harris?
We have a little bit of a challenge, and it's going to be kind of a run off the mill, right? So we know that you've been developing here for a period of time, and we know that you're a little bit an expert in accessible development. So we're going to ask you to write up an accessible button component and then show us while you're writing it, like your flow and then what you look for. Look at it in the accessibility tree. Show us what you're doing. Answer some questions along the way.
Okay.
Some accessibility questions, some random other questions.
Cool.
Are you able to find your way towards screen share?
That's what you're going to ask. It says something's uploading right now. Oh, that's the recording. Okay. Share. Let's try it. Okay. Actually scrambling to get stuff running, or a simple project showing up, set up, before this, but I just did, and I'm going to let Copilot finish doing this thing real quick. It set me up with a Vite React app, because that's what I'm most comfortable with. And I didn't actually know what the challenge is going to be, I promise. But I'm glad I set up this as a React project, because that's what I'll be most comfortable with. Spend a lot of time doing that. So I'm going to accept Copilot. Changes. It just set me up with something very basic. I created a directory named A11y fly, and so it looks like it ran with that and created some basic stuff. But we want to do is create a button component, correct?
Yes.
Like a reusable component that I can use
please.
in a few different places in an app or something.
Yep.
Okay. And you want me to walk you through my inner monologue, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah. Bring us along for the ride.
I'm hungry. That's one thing that's going on in my head. No.
Okay.
So for components, without any knowledge of what the rest of this product or project's going to evolve into, I'm just going to set up a basic components directory. This is where my components will be. And what I want to do then is create something with a name that I will remember in the future. Its purpose. So button, I think, makes sense. And admittedly, it's been a while since I've written a lot of code, so I might be doing some sloppy things, but
that's okay.
Out of laziness,
this is a judgment-free space.
I guess I'll just do import React from React, set up a basic, thanks Copilot, something like that. Okay. Copilot's done a lot, but let's make sure it's looking right. So something we want to be able to do with buttons is things in our application that manipulate state upon clicking it. This is a semantic button, so I know I don't need to add any keyboard handlers. I don't need to have tab edits, etc. one thing I don't like that Copilot did is ARIA label by default. I don't think I'm going to need that ever, because I want to make sure that this app uses visible text wherever possible. So if I cross the bridge where I need some fancy icon button and repurpose this thing that needs an ARIA label, I'll get there. I probably won't go the ARIA label route, though. I'll probably go visible tooltip. So at least there is, in a certain state, that visible text to try to avoid that otherwise. Same thing goes with styling. I don't want to, I'm like a DOM purist. I hate like extra bloat that's not being used. So until I need it, I will remove the class name. Maybe that's something that I can do. Like this is what I usually would do in the past, and then just spread any. Oh, yeah, exactly. Copilot, good job. And then spread any additional props. So if I wanted to do some weird override with an ARIA attribute or pass something like disabled, I can do that without having to update this component. So what this does is it says, I care about the on-click prop, and I'm going to set that as this button is on-click. I care about the children, so I'm going to set them as the children. Anything else that the caller tries to pass in as React props, I'm just going to spread onto the button. And so that'll make this a little more future-proof. What I would normally then do before I even do anything is write tests, but I'd rather not do that right now because I have to decide on like a test framework and stuff like that. So, to all the kids at home, definitely write your unit tests and eat your vegetables.
Okay, so this is a great start.
Okay.
Could we visualize the component? Could we look at it in Chrome?
Yeah, let's do that. So the next thing I would do for that is we already have a button. So let's see what AI created for us. So it looks like it's the classic count button stepper. What I want to do then is replace this thing that Copilot generated for me. And in fact, I'm going to get Copilot out of the way for now, and probably zoom in. Does that look good to you guys on the screen share side?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. So what I want to do is now replace this with the real button. So what just happened before our eyes is fancy IDE stuff, but I started typing the name of a component that it could find locally, and it just did the import for me. So we've imported this new reusable component, and I've swapped in the previous button with my new button component. And as you can see, there's an on-click, so that we need to make sure that the on-click's working as advertised. And it looks like it is because that's what's handling the state updating. I'm doing this with a mouse first, as you saw, and then if you saw I clicked away, I'm actually tabbing to it, hitting enter and space over and over again, and it looks like that works with the keyboard too. So I'm happy with where this button component's at.
Okay, great. So would you mind opening up the button component in the accessibility tree?
Oh, in the accessibility tree, gladly.
Yes.
They moved it to this. There we go. It's easier to get to now. Thanks, Chrome. So here it is.
Okay, we know it looks for a couple of things. It looks for the name, the role, the state. Now, we saw that you just did it perfectly, and we're going to ask you now to do it without all the React jazz. And we're going to ask you to do it with a div and then make a custom button. Right, you did it perfectly in the sense that you used an HTML button, which communicates all the necessary semantics to the accessibility API. We're going to ask you if you needed to make it with a div or even a span, can you make it? And walk us through
I can
that.
still use React, but you want me to not use semantic HTML?
Yes, you can still use React, but...
Can I throw a monkey wrench in there real quick first, though? So can you go back and tell me why you made the choices that you made? Right? What about this is accurate? Why is it accurate? Help me and someone that might be new to accessibility understand the benefit of you using, of you making these choices, right? What impact does that have on a screen reader user, for example?
The component choices? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Great question. So I kind of glossed over something or didn't fully explain my thoughts earlier when I was rambling about ARIA labels and other grumpy accessibility things. Yeah. One huge thing here. There's two things I want to focus on, but I think I'm going to start with the most important. Children here. For those who aren't familiar with React, it's children can be any nested component within this button. It could be just plain text. In this case, it's just plain text, right? We're passing in count is, and we're actually interpolating, we're pulling in that incremented number that starts at 0, and so that's why we see the text updating. And so that's important. If we did something different, that it tried to, figure out what the accessible name should be based on some other piece of data, that'd be silly. We want to make our components flexible, but we also, because I worked on Cauldron, so it's a whole different side of things. If you're working on a component library, you want to make things flexible, but you also don't want to. You want guardrails so people's wrists get slapped if they're doing something silly. So there's a fine line between it, and so if like I said earlier, like if it turns into us needing an icon button, I'd actually, instead of trying to repurpose this button component, I'd actually stand up a separate component for an icon button so I could enforce that thing gets named in a very specific way because they come with their own challenges. So in this case, it's pretty generic. There are no guardrails yet, but we could add them. But the important part here is I'm passing children through. So it still puts the responsibility on the caller, as I'll call it, when you're invoking a component. So here's the caller kind of. The responsibility is that the caller is going to pass something here. We could add prop types that would actually enforce that children are passed. So at the very least, you could pass anything. So you could do something inaccessible like this, an empty span. That's not going to help accessibility. But that's the step in the right direction. You could straight up, if we wanted to go super, if this will always be a text button, we could actually have a different prop called like text, and that would be enforced as a string. And if I don't pass it, the build would fail. And if I don't pass it in, the build would fail. So there's a lot of stuff we could do. I haven't done that yet. I'm happy to do that if the challenge prefers I do. But that's the one prop I wanted to. That's why I made that decision. Is this will make it flexible. It doesn't have enough guardrails yet. We can get there. The other important prop is on click. Like I said, 99%. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. 51% of the buttons that you create are probably going to be doing something custom. It might be launching a modal. The other 49% are like, submit buttons that you don't need to actually wire much up. If it's in a form and your form is handled in a traditional fashion, then sure, you don't need an on-click. But even then, I probably want to increase my 51 back to 99 because modern web developers don't have like their form data generically submitted to the server that way. They usually try to manipulate things and make an AJAX call. So they'll have their own on-click that does some pre-flight manipulation of the data and then makes an AJAX request. So you don't have to reload the whole page because that's what will happen by default. So you're probably always going to, every component library on the market and every one-off component library that people create for their own projects are going to have an on-click that you can do custom things when a button's clicked. That's not accessibility specific. That's more functionality. But in order to make interesting state changes accessible, you'll need to have a handle on what happens when you click the button. Does that help? Is that a good sufficiently cover your question?
Yeah. Well, I had one other specific question. So like early on, right, when you made the decision to remove, I think it was like you pulled out the suggestion for an ARIA label, right? Why did you do that?
Because when possible, we want the experiences of cited and non-cited users to be identical. In some cases, it needs to be, the only thing you can do is like create parity, but in a lot of cases, you can create identical experiences. And so an ARIA label creates more wiggle room for a developer using my component here to create experiences that are not equal, that are not identical. If I show the words count is 28 in text and tried to construct some other ARIA label that is slightly different, that's generally bad. So now if my blind colleague is tell me about an element in our app, and he tells me what his screen reader is telling him, and it doesn't match anything I see on the screen, it's going to be weird and confusing. And it's a lot better for everybody if it just is the same. In some cases, it's unavoidable, but in others, it's avoidable. So like I said earlier, it's like if this app needs to do something where this is unavoidable, sure, let's go back and consider our options. But for now, let's enforce that hopefully that's kind of a hidden guardrail to create an equal experience. At least it could be equally inaccessible if it's like a nonsense, it's an empty button, or there's an icon that no one understands what it means. Then that sucks, but it sucks for everybody at least.
So like an example of where the exception might be acceptable is if you've got multiple buttons and they all say submit.
Yeah.
What's the difference between this submit and that submit?
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. Like the learn more links, the submit buttons, anything repeated. That's where you can get some flexibility provided by ARIA labeling. And there are other ways to do that without area labels, like off-screen text, or maybe talk to the designer and add that descriptive text for everybody, because I think ultimately it's beneficial. Even if sighted users do have a nice heading above and some paragraph with learn more, it's nice if it says learn more about. So users with cognitive disabilities and everyone can really look at a link in isolation and really know what it's going to do. Like, where are you taking me? What am I doing when I click? What are you doing when I click this button or link? Sorry.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Sorry.
No,
Jeremy, I didn't mean to
that's
interrupt.
perfect.
Every once in a while, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll ask some questions for the new folks.
All right. So based on Jeremy's requirements, I'm going to be a little snarky and call this bad button.jsx. So you can really just know my opinion about it from the start.
Yep.
I'm going to steal from myself, my previous self, and call this bad button. So copied over the previous component. I'm looking at them side by side to make sure I kind of create parity, because I do, even if I need to support both, I want a nice consistent API contract, if you will, with all my components. I want to make sure that developers using this component library I'm creating, it's somewhat intuitive and they'll know how to create both a button and a bad button. And it's generally a similar experience for the developer there. So prop wise, I'm going to pass in the same thing. The only thing I'm going to do differently here is make this a div. I'm going to give it a role, a button. That's non-negotiable. This is a button component. I'm going to hard code that role there. Maybe in the future we repurpose this to be a different thing where it handles different types of buttons, like toggle buttons or whatever. For now, we're going to keep it simple. And so we're not done yet, right? So if I just did this and swapped in, I'll draw this logic out for you. So let's replace this bad button. Okay, bad button. Let's see if things, well, they won't be styled the same. We can make them styled the same if I go to app CSS. Just to humor people who are looking at this and wondering why everything broke when I did that. Let's make it more realistic. Yeah, sure, bad button. I actually like this notation better, so we'll do that. And in app CSS, I'm going to say app header. Yeah, thanks, Copilot. It's not going to be everything, though. It's not going to look the same. Okay, I'll get to styling later. Forget I did that. All right. Let's go back to bad button and make it at least accessible. So right now, I can't get to this count as 0 thing. If I click it with a mouse, you can see it's incrementing as expected. So it's functioning. It's functioning for a mouse user only. So first step, let's make it function for everybody. I need the full screen for this. So wrong component, bad button. So first thing we want to do, let's make it focusable. That's tab index. It's a
Why'd you use 0?
I'm sorry?
Why use 0 instead of 1 or -1?
So this is a DOM element property. There is actually a difference between the attribute tab index and the property, but I'll nerd on that later. It's 0 to make it naturally focusable. By naturally focusable, I mean if I'm a user tabbing through the page, adding tab index 0 will essentially make that a tab stop that matches, the tab order would match the DOM order. The reason I'm specifying DOM order and tab order now is if I go positive, if I go in the positive direction to 1 or 2, that's a way for me to say, sorry, browser, I know what I'm doing. Ignore DOM order, make this thing focused before something with tab index 0 would otherwise. So you can actually do a weird mixed bag where you got 50 elements on the page that are focusable. You can dictate the tab order by setting tab index of 1 to the thing you want to focus first, 2, maybe it's a thing in the footer, 3 could be in the middle, and you can have tab order bounce around. But that is generally a bad idea. In fact, it's a WCAG violation if the order of the sequence changes the meaning for a screen reader or keyboard user. Example of that, because that might be confusing for folks, the example I always use is something we've seen, 2-column form. You got first name, last name, email, social security number. Next column has like address line 1, address line 2. If you're bouncing from first name to address line 1, last name, it gets confusing, right? And maybe that name was a group. So you're bouncing between groups. That's going to change the vibe of the form for a screen reader user. So it's best to avoid that. I've personally never have needed to make use of tab index that greater than 0. So I would say, as a rule of thumb, it's probably avoidable. If you're working on fixing pre-existing content, that's when you maybe need it. If they did weird things like flex row, if they made the flex row reverse order, and tab index would be bouncing around kind of right to left, and that would change the meaning of like maybe some video player controls or something, then yes, maybe you need to fix that weird shenanigans and you somehow can't fix the order in the DOM itself, then yeah, make use of positive tab indices. But probably, if I've never had to do it, you probably don't ever have to do it.
Probably not. No.
And if you go the other direction, if we go into the negatives, that's when it only goes one level deep, which is -1. Tab index -1 will not be focusable in the natural tab order. So when I tab to the page, if I set this to -1, it would not land on this at all. I would never focus this unless some JavaScript on the page programmatically shifts focus to it. So we would, that looks like, div.focus. Tab index -1 allows an element to be focusable, but only programmatically. It also technically, if there are local internal links within a page, if you set tab index -1 on an element that has an ID and you have a link that points at that ID with a hash, then it can also be focusable. But I kind of put that in the programmatically focusable category. So long story short, I've set it to 0 because I think where it is in the DOM makes sense to where it would be in the tab order. In this case, I think it's like the only focusable thing, but you can imagine we're going to add more stuff probably. So I've covered making it focusable. Let's see that in action. I said, you need to save your changes, kids. Now it says focusable true. So it's good that we got the accessibility tree. It's tiny, but it's good that we got it open. So now, okay, look, there's a focus ring around this thing. But let me press enter and space till the cows come home. Nothing. So what do we have to do there? All right. Ooh, this has been a while. So we'll create a const. Oh, yeah. Copilot's making this too easy, man. You kids these days don't know how easy you have it. And in fact, let's do a little blast from the past. Event.key used to not be a thing. The old school front-end engineers know about which. I used to have to do something like this, which would be if e.which, equals 13, or e.which equals 32. Yeah, Copilot makes it easy.
That's a big throwback. That's a very big
So
throwback.
that's what I used to do all day, every day, is which. And 13 represents enter, and 32 represents space. Now you can reference it by its name in a nice human readable fashion. The code is a lot more readable too, which is nice. Yep. So we're saying if the user presses the enter key or the space key, invoke the on click. This is a cool kind of way to this exemplifies part of the interesting nature of creating reusable components. This component doesn't care what you're doing, right? But it knows that you, as the caller, so the caller, again, being this guy here, has something that happens on click of the button, and it's provided that. This is a prop that's been provided. And so we can actually key into that, no pun intended, by invoking the on click when they do what is the equivalent of a mouse click on a keyboard, which is enter a space. We probably also want to prevent default, which Copilot didn't do because Copilot, you're not as smart as me. And the reason I want to do that is spacebar in the browser. Let me move this. I should have my own window. Well, it's not going to be able to. Let me go to Google and search Deque or something. So if I press spacebar right now, it scrolls the page. And so if you forget to do e.prevent default, when a user uses the spacebar to press the button, it's going to scroll the page, which is annoying and actually potentially super confusing. If you use some kind of screen zoomer, you might just lose your place and forget what you were doing, and that's just bad. So always remember to prevent default for things like that so you don't cause unexpected behavior.
Can you test it?
What's that?
Is it ready to test?
Not quite yet. We haven't used this yet. So what I'm going to do is, thanks, Copilot. You stole my thunder. We're going to set an on key down listener. This is internal. These things like on click, on key down are internally supported by React. React knows to add a key down listener when we pass this as a prop. I don't have to think about it. I just have the handler itself. But behind the scenes, under the hood, there is some code out there that is basically setting an event listener in the DOM on the element that that this ends up being rendered as. And so on that DOM element, we're saying when enter or key or space is pressed, invoke the onClick. Now back in the caller, our onClick is this. Let's do some fun debugging. Yeah, thanks, Copilot. We're going to, replace that. So now I can add some logs and stuff, and it's a little cleaner for us to have this separated. All right, so I think we're ready to test it. As a recap, we set tab index to make it focusable and added a key down listener to make it clickable by keyboard. And it was already working with a mouse. So we should have all of our users covered. Well, some of our users covered, at least when it comes to a mouse and a keyboard. The styling still sucks, but that's okay. So it's focusable. Yay, tab index still works. I'm going to now press the return or the enter key. And yay, it's working. And now the space bar. Yay, it's working. And we should see some logs now saying hello over and over again. Yes, hello gets logged. Yay. So stuff's working well. For now, I think Jeremy's requirements have been met. So I'm going to
I don't
pass it
know.
back to them.
I don't know. So you have the handle key down function, right? Which the event looks for an enter or a space on key down, and then the button fires. Is that how a native button fires?
I believe so.
Okay, so could you add the normal button to the page, and then so you have each button stacked on top of each other?
Yeah.
All right, and let's test it.
Just to give everyone a way to compare.
Okay, so you have bad count, you have real count. So on the real count, press space and don't release it. Now for the bad count, press space and then don't release it.
Ooh.
All right, so there's a key up on space that gets handled, and on enter, it's key down.
Silly Dom. Yep, so what we can do there. That's never mattered enough for me to actually affect listeners, but we can do that.
It's something. It's hard, but there is a difference.
Well, it's luckily it's not that hard, and maybe that's actually why Copilot was like, "Okay, bro, I didn't mean to add space on purpose. I knew what I was doing. You're not smarter than me."
Yeah.
So, touche, robot. Okay, I really wish I had prettier setup, but I'm just going to toggle word wrap so we can keep reading my really long lines. Okay, so now we have a invalid JavaScript. Here we go. Now we should have some valid JavaScript that is handling enter the way that native buttons work. And we don't need default prevented there. Oh, thanks. It actually did that for me. I wasn't reading the code that it created. Okay. Yes, thanks for the semicolon. All right. So we have, I'm just making sure everything looks right. Key up, handle key up. Okay. So now let's run Jeremy's test again. So enter, enter, space. Yay, stuff works the same now.
Passes.
I did it.
Okay, so now in terms of styling, what do you have to keep in mind with styling for the fake button?
Yeah, so is the challenge, let's just assume that what was here is what we wanted and let's make the bad one look the same?
Sure.
Cool. Nope, I meant to do elements. Let's see. That's right, I'm looking at the accessibility version. Let's see what styles are currently applied to the button, and then let's just try to port that over. So button, okay, I want to see where this is coming from. Yep, this is index CSS. So what I just did was I looked at the button. I saw that there's clearly I could tell these weren't the user agent button styles, just visually and with these CSS properties being declared. This is something that I believe that was generated as part of like Copilot generating this project. So what I did was I clicked on this button, which takes me to the style declaration in the DOM. And I'm looking at the path and I see it says index CSS. And I actually noticed before that there is this index CSS. So I'm going to find the relevant code button. And I'm going to make things a little easy on myself and use this just instead of bad button, I'm just going to call it button, class button. So yes, Copilot. Yes, Copilot. Okay. So we have button in its focus state, button with focus visible. We have the class uppercase button with focus and focus visible. Same thing with hover. So all the styles should be the same, but I need to do one thing now. I need to go back and change the class name that's automatically added to all bad buttons to this button CSS class. Okay, so we might see that there are now, this is fun. This is a great little lesson in front-end development. Why do these things look different? They have literally the same exact styles declared. What's different? So let's look. This one's a div, this one's a button. I wonder, well, there is this too. Let's do this one too so I can really drive home the point. So we'll go back into app CSS. I think I changed that earlier and I need to add that back. So, sorry, Copilot, you're wrong. So app header button, we'll have the same margins now. Cool, that didn't do it though. We have like this really, really wide button in this one that's not as wide. And I know why, because I've come across this a lot of times in my career. So let's think about this. This is probably has nothing to do with the CSS in index.css that we were just looking at. It doesn't appear to be in app.css either, because both of these are the same across the board. We have margin, 1 rem, 0, and all these border radius, transition, etc. Same thing goes with here. But you might have seen something. If I switch between div and button, there are these user agent styles. One thing we want to focus on is this button has a display property of inline block, whereas divs inherit block, display block. So let's see if that changes anything. Let's say in, I guess app is fine. Let's do button, display inline. Let's make it behave truly like a real button. So now we have a few different styles discrepancies. We could continue going down this route, but really what it comes down to is the user agent having different styles applied by default to div and default to button. And those do actually vary by user agent. User agent is another word for like browser in this context. So yeah. Chrome might style buttons differently than Firefox, for example. Do we want to continue doing the...
No, it doesn't have to be perfect. I was mainly looking for if it added the focus style and the focus visible.
Oh, yeah, let's check that out because we haven't tested that. So it looks like, if I remember, there's like a little transition on it. Yeah, it's looking the same.
Okay, yeah, I saw when you added the CSS.
What's that?
When you were adding it to the CSS, it was focus and then focus visible.
Yeah.
Now, for extra ally support, when you focus on a button element, what else should you keep in mind? Should it just be color that signifies focus?
Usually ideally you come up with a somewhat consistent approach across your whole app. But traditionally users are used to seeing a focus ring. So I try to urge our products at Deque and designers who are designing awesome experiences for our products to, if they want to do other style differences, that's great. But I think having a core default focus ring is good. And there are certain exceptions where I think it's okay to have like cool first class focus states too. Like our modal component in Cauldron, instead of showing a ring around the whole modal, we actually focus the heading. And because they're entering a kind of landmark, similar to a landmark region, which is a dialogue, they get that dialogue information read out as for screen readers. So there are some exceptions where the typical your global focus ring can be deviated from, but generally speaking, like especially for buttons, I would say having this kind of light blue focus ring on everything, not just buttons but links as well, inputs as well, is good. But there's no problem if in the focus state we want to make the front foreground and background colors inverted or something too, to give it more visual distinction and prettier styles, because we can make things very accessible and very sexy, if you will, in the DOM. So that's usually that's where my head's at. Is I want a visible focus ring that works ideally in all on all components in your app, and that can include some considerations you want to make if you support dark and light mode, because this light blue that works well on a dark background might not. It might be a little more faint in light mode. So I would maybe urge us to have some global style declaration that flips the color of the focus ring depending on dark versus light mode.
What contrast are you looking for when you are making those considerations?
It depends on which. If we're testing against WCAG 2.1, it doesn't actually matter, which I think is bad. It does matter. We're looking for probably at least 3-to-1. I think WCAG 2.2 has a AAA rule, maybe it's double, I can't remember, that actually talks about whether a focus indicator is sufficiently visible and contrasting enough from its surrounding colors. So I would say, as a rule of thumb, 3-to-1 is good to shoot for, and the higher that number, the better.
Yeah, we agree.
Is your focus state and hover state always the same? Is there a reason for a difference there? Or?
There isn't. I don't think there's a valid reason for a difference there. I would say, it looks like they have a fancy little like animation transition, and we could easily use that same one. I don't think focus and hover styles need to be the same, but ideally they are. But it's one of those things. Maybe it's like choose your battles kind of thing. Then I think this isn't one of those battles that like in a designer view I would like die on the hill of. I would say, okay, Mrs. Designer, if you really want to have the hover and focus styles be different for whatever reason, sure. As long as we have a sufficient focus indicator, I'm happy. And as long as we're not creating color contrast issues when we're in focused or hover states, the same accessibility rules are going to apply to both. There are some specifics that apply to focus, of course, but touch target size, both mouse and keyboard stuff. Color contrast thresholds are still applicable in any state, so you need to make sure that those considerations are made.
Cool beans. Now, what happens to the pointer? I noticed with the hover styles, the pointer changes.
Yeah, it's actually mirroring. Well, let's see. I actually don't remember seeing if there's a cursor declaration here. Yeah, so that's dictated by this. If we took this out, let's see what default browser behavior is. So with the bad one, we get this weird. We get the typical pointer, I think is what that's called in CSS speak, or no? Yes, that's pointer. Jeremy, help me here. Which one is this? Cursor.
I think it's highlight. That looks like a highlight.
Well, before I get to over the text, whatever the default one is, I guess I could just look.
Well, arrow is the arrow.
Okay, right. So arrow and then highlight or whatever. Yep. So we have a difference here because we have the arrow and then this highlighty thing, and then we just have the arrow with the native button. So stuff behaves a little differently. Generally speaking, you can't like highlight and select the text of a button, which is kind of annoying. But then again, if you're double clicking on buttons, you'd get this kind of highlight behavior, which I think designers will cringe at. So
they're also both firing. Like they're both connected right now.
Yeah. And that's expected because the app is using the same state for both. We could make it separate if we wanted to.
That's okay.
But so yeah, with the CSS declaration we had, we kind of normalized both to have the pointer. I don't know of specific WCAG success criteria that would be impacted by our cursor decisions here. So if there is, feel free to share with the audience something I'm missing.
I think most of it is what you mentioned earlier, in which there should be parity between the two. They should expect the same thing. And then if you're zooming in, like let's say you're someone with low vision, right? And you hover over a button element.
Sorry,
No, you're fine. You're fine.
My wife was going to come into the shop. Nope, I heard her knock the other door. But go ahead, sorry.
Um, I think what you mentioned with the parity between having the same experience, right? So if you have
Yeah,
someone with low vision who might be a mouse user and they highlight over something, if it's a link, it might remain an arrow, right? So they might not know the button is going to institute a state change. But if it's a pointer, it's a lot more flagrant because that is the common browser styles.
yeah. And I think that this might be, and it's a good thing to be considering. This might be treading into like technically this is like best practice territory, but it's a good example of something that you should strive to do, even if WCAG hasn't technically covered that base yet. Um, so yeah, it's we have to consider everyone who might be using this application and their various abilities, and we don't want to leave people confused and leave them with an inconsistent behavior between two things that visually appear identical and functionally do the same thing with a few exceptions. An exception would be like, oh, I can highlight the text on this one and not on that one. Is there something different? Is this not a button? We don't want to have people asking themselves that. So creating consistent experiences is just a no-brainer.
Hey, Jeremy, can I ask Harris? I got two questions. So, first question, Harris, is why are boxers the superior dog breed?
Okay, so background is I've had boxers my whole life. I mean, we had a boxer when I was growing up. It's like a young teenager. Had a blast playing with Roxy. Rest in peace, Roxy. And fast forward to my wife, my now wife, but my girlfriend at the time. We lived together. We both grew up with dogs, and we were trying to decide on a breed and what we were looking for. And I mentioned how much fun I had with my boxer as a kid, Roxy. And so we ended up getting Ophelia. And fast forward today, we have two boxers, Rosie and Tulip. And we are definitely like kind of a boxer family for life. So to answer your question, why I think they're best is they're really entertaining. They're vocal. They give eye contact more than most breeds. They really will like guilt you with puppy eyes on purpose. They know exactly what they're doing. Super playful and energetic. So yeah,
Puppies for
what's
life.
that? They're puppies for life. Yeah, you could see an old gray boxer that might be a little slower than they were before, but they're still playing, jumping, being puppy-like, which some people don't like. It's not for everybody. They are a lot of work. You got to take them on walks, ideally a couple times a day, unless you got a big yard and you can play with them. But they need attention. They need exercise. They need your human affection. But I think those are all good things. Forces me when I'm lazy to like maybe go on walks when I otherwise wouldn't. I love going on walks with my dogs, but if days where you're feeling a little sluggish, it's nice to have that extra motivation. You don't want to leave your dog, sprinting little what we call pig laps. A lot of people call zoomies. You don't want zoomies in the house and destroying things. So it's best to keep them nice and exercised, so they take naps and they don't chew things up and stuff.
I heard, while we're on this aside, I heard that the form, like when they came up with this breed, right? They were bred to help hunt bear. I have no idea if this is accurate, but I heard that they were bred to hunt bear, not to like take down bear, but like they're they've got good jaw strength, and they're just large enough to be able to like grip and hold on to assist in the hunting of bear.
Yeah, I went on a very weirdly deep dive into bears in general when I was like 12. So I know a lot about how superior they are as predators, and they're awesome. But I unfortunately have come across humans tactics in hunting them. And I know that I think hound dogs are used in modern times, and they're not necessarily hunting in the sense that like they're taking the bear down, but in fact two or three hound dogs will corner a bear up to a tree or something, and it doesn't know what to do because there's a few of them, and that's how humans unfortunately leverage dogs to hunt bear. But yeah, that's interesting. I never heard that one. I know that they were the original police dog in Germany, which is so hard for me to fathom.
That's goofy
bug-eyed boxers helping take down some perps. That's just funny.
Okay, I promised the second question. All right. So you know a lot about accessibility. you were describing through this entire process what you're doing, why you were doing it. Can you erase accessibility from this knowledge of accessibility from your mind for a minute?
Try.
And walk us through this challenge a little bit and testing along the way as someone who doesn't know what they're doing, but is trying to do the right
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
So you want to make an accessible button, but you don't already know how to do it. What do you do?
Let's do something really quickly. What I'm going to do is create a third component called really bad button. And that's similar to bad button, but it's going to be what I would do had I not known anything about accessibility. I got some requirements from maybe a designer or something. The ticket that I picked up, I know it needs to look like our button, so I would definitely keep this class name around. I'd definitely keep the on click around. But one thing I wouldn't do is have thought about any kind of keyboard considerations yet. So yeah, I'm a developer. I have good intentions. I like to build things that work well and work well for everybody. But I don't really know about this accessibility thing. I've heard whispers of it. I actually picked up a ticket last quarter where I added a bunch of alt text to some images on our marketing site. But that's really the extent of accessibility. It's a little bit daunting to me because, I care about everybody, but I don't know where to start. I don't really know how to make things accessible. I don't want to create something that's bad, but I don't know what I don't know. So on the subject of really bad, let's invoke our new component. Really bad button. Okay. And let's focus on this. Let's pretend I didn't have these accessible options here. So I'm going to comment those out. So now I'm left with.
You didn't change the component name in reallyBadButton.jsx.
Thank you. And my code reviewer just saved me a bit of time. And VS Code didn't import this like I needed it to. There you go. All right. So now I have a thing that looks like my designer wanted it to, and it might act like that as well when I click it with a mouse. It's great. But I have heard, my company did a very quick initiative where we hired a consultancy to run a full accessibility analysis manually. They gave us all sorts of spreadsheets. I was told that we had hundreds of thousands of issues across our whole app. We got like this thing called a VPAT, but I don't know much about what happened. I don't get to make priority decisions. I just pick up the work I'm assigned and get a gold star if I do it in a good amount of time. So one thing I do know is beyond alt text is that generally speaking, the consultancy said that we lack proper keyboard and screen reader testing, and they mentioned that there are even some free tools on the market. There's this one called Axe that I think I installed at the time. I haven't admittedly opened it since then. But since we're talking about creating buttons and I'm thinking about accessibility, one thing I want to do is actually just run a quick scan of this thing using the Axe DevTools extension that's been sitting here gathering cobwebs. So it looks like everything is accessible here, but I don't think it's done any keyboard testing. And so one thing I want to do really quickly is try out these intelligent guided tests I've heard about. One of my colleagues, they're kind of like our only accessibility on-site expert. They use this pro extension, and I've heard them talk about how they've been able to automate things like keyboard testing. And it looks like, as I was saying that, I noticed that there's one of these IGTs called keyboard. So I'm going to start that one. So let's see what it does. It's going to try to tab through the page. It's performing keyboard tab tests, and it's looking for keyboard and operability issues. It says 0 tab stops were recorded. That sounds wrong to me, though. I wonder if Axe is confused or if I'm confused, because I expected this button to be in the tab order. But let's see what happens. Maybe it knows something I don't. Okay, so it's saying our AI found, Axe's AI found a button that or an element that appears to be interactive, but it's not. It should have been in the tab order, but it's not, and I agree. So that's exactly what I was just saying in the last step. I was like, wait, I expected this thing to show up. And so thank you, AI. You confirmed my pre-existing belief. And sure enough, so it's actually found an issue here saying that there's no way to perform this function using a keyboard. Yeah, okay, that's what that person was ridiculing me about before. It's all making so much sense now. So I don't really know what this means, though, so let me just try to make some sense of it. It's saying there's no way to perform this. Yep, I already saw that. It's telling me where this element is. That's useful. And that's really it. So it says function cannot be performed by keyboard alone. I've noticed that there's this more information link. Let's look and see some code examples. That's that tab index thing. Okay, I remember that now. So tab index is what makes something show up when you're tabbing through the page. It will actually show up and be focused, which is what I think this tool just tried to do, but it wasn't focused. So I think I already have an idea of what needs to be done here. Let's go back to really bad button and add some tab index. I'm going to steal right from that code example and add tab index 0. So real quick, let's rerun this test. I'm going to refresh to make sure everything's good to go. But yeah, it looks like when I do this manually, I can actually tab to it. Oh, cool. There's this little replay thing. I wonder if that's going to save me some time. I'm going to click replay. It's doing some stuff, it looks like. And it looks like there are so it in fact highlighted the thing that we missed last time. So there's nothing left to select. And okay, here's something new. So we've detected elements in the tab order. Okay, yay, we're in the tab order. That's good. That's the issue that we found. But I'm not done yet, it looks like. It's saying this lacks a role which indicates interactivity to assistive technology. That's that screen reader testing that they're ridiculing me about not doing. Yeah, this element's interactive. So what? I think it's good to go, right? Oh, it's saying that I'm missing a role for this. I'm not really sure what to do with that information, so let's try to dig in and see if we can really get, at least from a keyboard perspective, axe clean. So it's saying the element's role is missing. Okay, I'm starting to make sense of this. I think that means I need to add a role here. So maybe role equals interactive. Oh, looks like there's an issue. Oh, right. Yeah, okay. It's acting like a button. Add class button. So I think this is telling me that button's a valid role. Let's try to run one more test. Make sure our hot reload's working. Yeah, we have a role of button. Let's run this one last time, hopefully. Might uncover more, though. So nothing missing. We're expecting one. Okay, 0 issues. So from a keyboard perspective, this looks like it's at least focusable and will expose the right information to a screen reader user, that it's a button. So I'm feeling better about myself now, and I'm not making our app less accessible. Hooray.
You're really a shockingly convincing accessibility novice.
I try.
I think we also got our episode title.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw out like Jack White, I think, wrote the hardest button to button.
Here we go.
That's fair. Thanks for joining us in this episode of Ally on the Fly. Smash that subscribe button. Special thank you to the Harris Schneiderman for joining us this week.